Business Law, Sales Part 2. Important distinctions. Sale from the shown-in payment. In sale, there is no pre-existing credit, while in the shown-in payment, there is a pre-existing credit. For the seller, the cost of sale is the price. For the debtor in the shown-in pago, the cost is the extinguishment of his obligation in money. In sale, obligations are created, while in the shown-in pago, the obligation is extinguished. And in sale, there is a greater freedom in the determination of the price of the thing sold, while in the shown-in payment, there is less freedom in determining the price of the thing delivered. Sale from contract for a piece of work. Contract for the delivery at a certain price of an article which the vendor manufactures or procures for general market is sale, even though the object is not yet existing at the time of the sale. In a contract for a piece of work, the goods are to be manufactured especially for the customer and upon his special order, and not for the general market. Sale from barter. In sale, the consideration for the transfer of ownership of a thing is money or its equivalent or negotiable instrument, while in barter, the consideration is another thing. If it is paid for, an object consists partly of money and partly some other object, the transaction may be determined based on the intention of the parties, or in the absence of clear intention between the parties, the following rules should be observed. If the value of the object is greater than the cash, it is barter. If the cash is greater than the value of objects, it is sale. If the cash and objects have equal, it is sale. Sale or return from sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction. In a sale or return, ownership of the thing sold is transferred to the buyer upon delivery, but the vendee is given the option to return it. In a sale on trial, satisfaction, or approval, the ownership is retained by the seller, notwithstanding the delivery of the thing to the buyer. Pacto de retro from mortgage. The pacto de retro sale, there is no foreclosure unless declared on equitable mortgage, while in mortgage, the thing mortgaged shall be forced if the obligation is not paid. And in pacto de retro sale, there is no pre-existing obligation, while in mortgage is just an accessory obligation to secure the performance of an existing obligation. Option money from earnest money. Option money is given to exercise the option period, while earnest money is given to show the buyer's interest in a contract of sale. Option money is given before perfection of the sale, while earnest money is given after the contract has been perfected. Option money is separated and distinct from purchase price, while earnest money is part of the purchase price. Actually, the earnest money is a down payment. Form of the contract of sale. Generally, a contract of sale may be orally executed, and as long as the three essential elements of the contracts are present, the sale is valid. However, there are contracts of sale which must be in writing to be valid and enforceable. It is in writing. The document may be private or public instrument. The contracts of sale which must be in writing to be enforceable between the parties pursuant to the statute of fraud are: A. Sale of real property regardless of the amount. Sale of personal property if the price is 500 pesos or more, and sale which must be performed or executive only after more than a year from the time of agreement. The foregoing provisions under the statute of fraud apply only to purely executory contracts. Hence, the contract of sale is enforceable although orally established if it has been partially or totally executed. Obligations of the seller: to deliver the thing sold, to transfer its ownership, to warrant the thing sold, to take care of its pending delivery, and to pay for the expenses of the deed of sale. Among these obligations, the duty to transfer the ownership of the thing sold cannot be waived by the buyer. Kinds of delivery: actual or real delivery. The thing is placed in a possession and control of the buyer. Constructive delivery, such as execution of public document, legal formalities. Symbolic delivery, delivery of the key. Traditio longa mano, by mere pointing at the object. Traditio brevi mano, buyer is already in possession, so no need to deliver. Traditio constitutum possessorium, no delivery because seller will continue in possession, not as an owner but in different capacity. Quasi-delivery, the object is intangible or incorporeal, placing of the title of ownership in the name of the buyer or allowing the buyer to exercise the right. Remember, ownership is transferred only by delivery. Warranties. The seller of a thing warrants that the buyer will not be evicted from or deprived of the property sold, warranty against eviction, and the property sold is free from any hidden faults or effects, warranty against hidden defects. Eviction is a judicial process whereby the buyer is deprived totally or partially of the ownership of the thing purchased because of the seller's fault. In case of breach warranty against hidden defects, the remedy of the buyer is to either rescind the contract of sale, action redhibitoria, or proportionate reduction of the price, action quanti minoris or estimatoria. Two important requisites must be, however, present to be able to sue of this warranty, to wit: there must be really an important defect, and the defect must be really hidden or could not have been known. Rights of the unpaid seller. The unpaid seller has the following rights: specific performance or right to demand payment of the price, right to rescind or cancel the sale, right of possessory lien, right of stoppage in transitu, and right to resell. Right to demand payment of the price. The seller may make extrajudicial demand to obtain the price of the object sold from the buyer plus damages or interest in case there is already delay. Right to rescind or cancel the sale. The unpaid seller may unilaterally rescind or cancel the sale if the object of the sale is personal property and it is still in his possession. If the personal property sold is already in the possession of the buyer, judicial rescission is necessary. In a sale of real property, the distinction must be made as to whether it is a contract of sale or a contract to sell, with the right to rescission in either case. If the thing sold is a real property with a stipulation that the contract shall be automatically cancelled or rescinded upon failure to pay the price, the buyer is allowed to pay the price after the expiration of the period to pay, as long as the seller has not yet asked for a judicial or notarial rescission of the contract. In a contract to sell real property with the stipulation that the contract shall automatically be rescinded or cancelled upon failure to pay price or installment, such stipulation is considered valid. Right of possessory lien. The seller has the right to retain the goods until payment of the price. This right can only be exercised for as long as the property is still in the possession of the seller. Once the object has been delivered to the buyer, the right of possessory lien is lost because this lien on the price remains. This means that although the property is already in the possession of the buyer, the seller is considered a preferred creditor relative to the price of the thing sold, which preferred in subordinate only to the government's claim to specific taxes on a thing sold. Right of stoppage in transitu. This is the seller's right to stop the delivery of goods in a transit to the buyer when the buyer becomes insolvent. The seller can get back the goods and exercise his possessory lien on the same. If the property is already in the possession of the buyer who is insolvent, the seller has the following remedies: to demand for the return of the property, to ask the attachment of the buyer's other properties, to ask for the rescission of the contracts entered into by the buyer to defraud him, to be subrogated in place of the buyer. Rights to resell. The seller who is still in possession of the property sold to buyer may sell it again to another in the following cases: when there is stipulation granting him this right in case of the buyer's failure to pay, when the goods of a perishable in nature, when the debtor has been in default for an unreasonable length of time. If the thing is resold for a higher price, the seller retains the excess, but if they resold for a lower price, the buyer is liable to pay the deficiency. The right to resell is optional on the part of the seller. Obligations of the buyer. The buyer has the following obligation: to accept delivery. In the absence of stipulation, the buyer cannot be compelled to accept partial delivery and has the right to reject the thing sold if it is not completely delivered. Generally, he has also the right to examine the goods before acceptance. However, in the case of COD, the buyer cannot examine the goods unless they pay first. His remedy in the case of goods delivered by COD are defective is to sue the seller for violation of the warranty against hidden defects, which must be done by him within a reasonable time. If there is a justifiable ground for the buyer to reject the goods delivered to him, he must notify the seller so that the seller can get the goods, but he has no obligation to send it back to the seller. Obligation to pay the price. Aside from the price, the buyer is required to pay interest from the period between delivery and actual payment to the following cases: if it's stipulated in the contract, if the thing sold produces fruits or income, if he's already in default or in delay. Remedies of the buyer. The following are remedies of the buyer against the seller. To demand for specific performance plus damages if the seller refuses to deliver the thing sold without just cause. To sue for the rescission of the contract plus damages if the seller refuses to comply with his obligation without just cause. To suspend the payment of the price if there is a well-grounded fear that he would be deprived of the possession or ownership of the property purchased because a third person has brought or is about to bring an action to get the object of sale. To refuse acceptance if the property purchased on valid grounds, or to sue for damages in case of breach of warranty against eviction or against hidden defects. In case of a seller's breach of warranty against eviction, the buyer can demand for a seller the value of the thing purchased at the time of the eviction, which value may be greater or lesser than the purchase price. The buyer is also entitled to reimbursement of the value of the fruits or income of the property he delivered to the winner. In case of bad faith, the seller will also be liable for damages, interest, and reimbursements of ornamental expenses incurred by the buyer. To ask for the reduction of the price. In case of breach of warranty against hidden defects, the buyer may ask for the proportionate reduction of the price, action quanti minoris or estimatoria, or rescind the contract, action redhibitoria. Sale of real property against through an agent. When a piece of land or any interest therein will sold through an agent, the agent authority must be in writing, otherwise the sale is void. Special rules on the sale of real estate. Real estate may be sold by unit or by lump sum. Sale by unit. In sale by unit, the total area stated in the contract must be delivered to the buyer. Failure on the part of the seller to do will give the buyer the right to choose either to ask for a proportionate reduction of the price, rescind the contract if the lacking area is at least 1/10 of the area stated in the contract. An exception, even if what is lacking is less than 1/10 of the area stated in the contract, the buyer may rescind the contract if he would not have bought it if he had known of the smaller area. Sale for a lump sum. In sale for a lump sum, there shall be no increase or decrease of the purchase price, although there may be a greater or less area than stated in the contract. Here, the buyer can demand for the delivery of the area within the boundaries stated in the contract. If the seller refuses to do so, the buyer may choose between rescission, proportionate reduction of the price. Sale. Ayan na.